Hey, everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Thanks for being patient with me. Here I am. I'm here, and we're going to have a great conversation tonight. So hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the notifications bell. Should be a good show. Off to a little bit later start than I planned, but better late than never. Better late than never. The show must go on, as they say. So let's go.
Of the American century. I say that the century on which we are entering can be and must be the century of the common man.
A radical redistribution of economic power.
I mean, we know that racism is just a byproduct of capitalism. Everything would be all right if everything was put back in the hands of the people.
We need a government that will make sure Americans are taken care of and organize the economy to serve the people, not the profits of a wealthy few.
We now have the techniques and the resources to get rid of poverty.
We got to start getting out there with the people.
Get out of the movement and get to the masses.
We need a government of action.
Folks, it's good to be here with you tonight. Good to be here with all of you. Got a few things on my mind here tonight. So hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the notifications bell. Now, for those of you who are not familiar with how we do things here on this show, the way we do things is I give my opening remarks. I comment about the news. I talk about world events. I just talk about whatever it is I'm going to open the show with. We talk about that. And then from there, we do a roll call where I call you all out as I see you, names and locations. We find out who it is on the other side of the camera, who's watching. So we do that. And then after that, I then answer super chat questions for the rest of the night. So if there's something that you all would like me to talk about in the second half of the show, by all means, send me a super chat. Super chats are always appreciated. I will write them down as we go along, and in the second half of the show, I'll start answering them. Couple quick announcements just before we get ahead of ourselves here. Couple quick announcements. First big announcement is that coming up in March, in Washington, D.C., the Center for Political Innovation is hosting a Summit Against Hypocrisy. And it's going to be awesome. There's going to be different speakers from around the United States and around the world. We're going to be exposing Joe Biden's Democracy Summit, which is just a war propaganda summit. So please register and join us for that important event. It's going to be awesome. We'd love to have you there. Another announcement is that, if you want to help out with this kind of thing, you can just become a member of the Center for Political Innovation, the socialist, anti-imperialist think tank that is putting on great conferences. You can just become a member. We have Zoom calls every Saturday. We connect you with local organizing folks and reading groups and all that kind of stuff. We're currently teaching people how to give classes, and we're building an organization. If you want to donate to support the work that we do here on this YouTube channel, you can always buy me a coffee. That's one way to do it. Or you can sign up on the Patreon. Here's the buy me a coffee link. That's just a quick rundown of the announcements. I don't know if folks heard. Last time we mentioned that one of the speakers at our upcoming conference is going to be the great Jyoti Brar. Jyoti Brar is going to be speaking. So that's going to be awesome. I'm a big fan of Jyoti Brar. She's a great anti-imperialist activist from Britain, and she is going to be speaking at our upcoming conference. And a lot of other folks are too. We got a lot of other speakers we're figuring out, and a lot of people coming in from around the country. It's going to be really awesome. So hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and hit the notifications bell. If you got something you want me to talk about in the second half of the show, shoot me a super chat. And I guess I'll just jump right into my opening remarks. My opening remarks tonight might surprise people. But it's going to show you the kind of thinking that I am working to cultivate here in America, number one. And it's also going to show you the approach that the Center for Political Innovation is bringing to things here in the United States and our ongoing political crisis, and why it is so unique and why it is so desperately needed. So I'm going to start out by quoting from the Communist Manifesto. You folks ever heard of the Communist Manifesto? It's one of the most important documents in the history of Marxism. Communist Manifesto, published in 1848. It was kind of the document that gave voice to the communist movement. It starts out, a specter is haunting Europe, and it talks about how even though there was no organized communist grouping, the capitalists were already saying there's a group of people called communists who want to seize private property. And so already the ruling class was witch hunting and afraid of communism. And so because of that, Karl Marx and his allies started to form a communist league, a communist party. Well, they wrote this document in 1848 to explain what it was they believed. And towards the very end of the document, the very end of the Communist Manifesto, the very, very end, we're talking like 2 paragraphs from the end of the Communist Manifesto. This is what it said. It says, in short, the communists everywhere support every revolutionary movement against the existing social and political order of things. In all of these movements, they bring to the front as the leading question in each the property question, no matter what its degree of development at the time. Now, a lot of communists don't take these 2 sentences very seriously. But these are not just passing remarks from Karl Marx. This is like right near the very end of the Communist Manifesto. He's making a point, and he says, in short, communists everywhere support every revolutionary movement. And you notice he didn't just say communists support every revolutionary movement. He said communists everywhere support every revolutionary movement. He's going out of his way. He's going out of his way to emphasize the point. Everywhere support every. He's going out of his way to emphasize it. He's going out of his way to emphasize the point. He says communists everywhere support every uprising against the existing social and political order of things. In all of these movements, they bring to the front as the leading question in each the property question, no matter what its degree of development at the time. And very few people, I think, really take this seriously. This means that wherever people are at odds with the system, wherever they're opposed to the status quo, wherever they are challenging the rich and powerful, wherever they are in revolt, wherever the people are rising and gathering together and rallying, the communists support them. Whether they're right, whether they're wrong, whether they're backward, whether they're black, they're white, Asian, Arab, Latino, Christian, Muslim, Jew, documented, undocumented, right wing, left wing, wherever there is an uprising against the existing order of things, communists support it. But in all of them, what do? They bring to the front as the leading question the property question, no matter what its development at the time. So no matter how confused these people are who are at odds with the system, no matter how much the people are confused and don't get it, no matter what the development at the time, when people are in motion against the system, communists go to them and say that the problem is capitalism and the answer is socialism. Wherever people are in motion, it is the job of communists to support them, but also go to them and put forward the property question, i.e., tell them that the real problem is capitalism and the answer is socialism. That's our responsibility. And most communists do not take that responsibility seriously. They don't. They look at it and they say, oh, there's a rally in Washington, D.C. called Rage Against the War Machine. Some of the people there are right wing, so I'm not going to support it, and I'm not going to go there and put forward the property question. I'm just going to ignore it. Well, that's not your job. Doesn't matter if people there are right wing. Doesn't matter how much they're off from the property question. Doesn't matter the degree with which it's developed. If people are rallying and raging against the war machine, that sounds an awful lot like what does it sound like? That sounds like a revolutionary movement against the existing and social political order of things. And so if there's a rage against the war machine, you support it. And at the same time, you then go to it and bring to the front, as the leading question in each, the property question, meaning you go there, and even if people don't want to hear it, even if people aren't ready for it, you go into this revolutionary movement and you bring forward the property question. That's what communists do. Wherever people are at odds with the system, communists support it. Wherever people are struggling for their rights against the rich and powerful, whenever people are opposing the wars, whenever workers are out on strike, whenever working people are demanding more civil liberties, wherever they are, no matter who they are, no matter how backward they might be, no matter how confused they might be, doesn't matter. You always support them. Because your enemy is the capitalist state. Your enemy is the imperialist global order. Your enemy is the ruling class. Your enemy is the FBI and the CIA. Your enemy is the billionaire monopolists that run the country. So any revolutionary movement against the existing social and political order of things, you support it. However, it's not enough to just support it. In all of them, you then bring to the front the property question. And what I have seen among communists lately, in woke, typical, irrelevant communists, they do two things. One, if it's a right-wing movement, if it's a movement that has been labeled right-wing, or it has conservatives added, or it's partly right-wing, or it's led by right-wingers, if it's the Tea Party that was protesting against the tax system, well, they don't support it. They call it racist, they call it fascist, and they don't support it. Well, that's not correct. Is the tax system our friend? No. The tax system is rigged by the ruling class. So if the Tea Party happens, if there's a bunch of working class people and middle class people that are protesting against the tax system, we support it. We may not support what they believe in. We may not even support exactly the way they're framing it. But if they're in revolt against the tax system, like they were at the Tea Party, we support it because that's a revolt against the existing political and social order of things. However, we then got to go to the Tea Party and say, the problem is actually capitalism. And the answer is a society where the banks, factories, and industries are under public control. So that's the first mistake communists make, is if the rebellion is not considered to be left-wing, if it is considered to be right-wing or libertarian or centrist, they don't support it. The other mistake that communists make, though, is that if the rebellion is considered to be left-wing, like Black Lives Matter, like Occupy Wall Street, if the rebellion is considered to be left-wing, they go to it and they don't challenge it. They just blindly support it. They don't challenge the narrative. They don't put forward socialism. They tail after it. And we see this with Black Lives Matter. The PSL, the Party of Socialism and Liberation, they support Black Lives Matter. So do I. I support Black Lives Matter also. I'm against the police state. But PSL doesn't challenge the identity politics narrative. It panders and it tokenizes Black Lives Matter. It doesn't go to Black Lives Matter and say the answer is not identity politics. The answer is socialism. It doesn't put forward the property question. It just goes to Black Lives Matter and tails after them. It doesn't put forward the property question. So if you don't support revolutionary movements against the existing social order just because they're right-wing, you're not doing your job. And if you do support left-wing movements, but you don't insert revolutionary politics and the property question into them, you're not doing your job. You're not doing your job because communists everywhere support every uprising against the existing social and political order of things. Every single one. Doesn't matter. Does not matter. Does not matter. And this is an orientation that communists used to have. This used to be the orientation that communists had. In the 1930s, this was the orientation that communists had. 1920s, this was the orientation. Communists joined the Farmer Labor Party. When communists joined the farmers that were having revolts in Oklahoma, when communists were leading strikes. And I mean, this was their approach, that wherever people are at odds with the system, communists go to them and bring forward the property question. That's our job. It's that simple. And honestly, folks, I'm looking at what's on the horizon in the coming months here in the United States. And I'm seeing something that is going to be a revolutionary movement against the existing order of things, that it's going to be very, 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 very hard for some communists to support. It's going to be very, very hard for them to support it. There's just no bones about it. There's no bones about it. But it looks like things are lining up. As the great Sam Marcy used to say, I have no crystal ball. There's no way to predict what's going to happen. We sit here, we try to read the tea leaves, we try to look at trends. But folks, there's something going on. There's something brewing beneath the surface right now. And I'm going to explain to you what may be happening very soon. We don't know. We don't know what's going to happen. But as somebody who's been through Occupy Wall Street and saw how that developed, and somebody who's been through the Black Lives Matter movement, saw how that developed, and someone who pays attention to these kind of things, I'm going to make a prediction. About something that's about to happen. Passing up on that guy selling the PLP paper. Very good. I'm going to make a prediction about what's going to happen. And, it's a little bit weird. It's a little bit weird. But it might be the beginning of something. And a lot of times, political movements, this is what you have to understand. A lot of times, political movements start out one way, and then they end up another. The most famous example of that is the French Revolution. The March to Versailles. You ever heard of the March to Versailles? The March to Versailles was a big event in the French Revolution. All these peasants were hungry. They were piling into Paris because they didn't have food. So they all decided, there were all these desperately poor people in Paris, they were going to march to Versailles, where the king had his palace. And they were going to march to Versailles, and they were not going to overthrow the king. They were going to march to Versailles to beg the king to give them food. And so thousands and thousands of poor people marched from Paris to Versailles. By the time they got to Versailles, they were not begging the king for food. When they got to Versailles, they arrested the king. And pretty soon, they cut his head off. What started out as a march singing songs in praise of the king, pretty soon turned into a march that ended up arresting and cutting the king's head off. It's been said that many times throughout history, there have been people marching, singing God Save the King as they march to cut a king's head off. A lot of times, political movements start out one way, end up another way. Another great example of that is the civil rights movement. Go and listen to the speeches of Dr. Martin Luther King from the 1950s. 1954, Montgomery bus boycott. Martin Luther King Jr. was quoting the Constitution constantly, and he was saying, we want nothing but the American dream. It was all about American patriotism. We just believe in civil rights. Civil rights and the Constitution, that's all we believe in. Fast forward a decade later, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was calling for the overthrow of capitalism. He was killed. You had the Black Panthers. And the civil rights movement started out as a very patriotic liberal movement, just saying maybe black people should have like basic human rights. And it turned into a revolutionary movement that shook the country. And sometimes things that seem mild in manner can become bold in matter. I believe that's a quote from Karl Marx, if I'm not mistaken. Mild in manner, bold in matter. I believe that's a quote. Yes, it's a quote from a letter that Karl Marx wrote to Engels. And he said, bold in matter, but mild in manner. Mild in manner, but bold in matter. Meaning that people can be doing something that does not seem very radical. It seems pretty basic, pretty incorrect. But the essence of what they are doing points to a truth that is much bigger. When Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. did the civil rights movement, it was very mild in manner. What they were saying is just give us equal rights. But it was very bold in matter, because what they were doing is they were pointing out that the oppression of black people is built into America. America started out with slave ships, that the black people have been treated as a colonized nation, that the Soviet Union was on their side and the FBI was against them. And that while what Martin Luther King Jr. seemed to be doing was just very basic, he was saying, maybe we ought to be allowed to vote like it says in the Constitution. Maybe we ought to be able to drink out of drinking fountains. What he was doing was putting the entire system of American capitalism and imperialism into crisis. Mild in manner, bold in matter. Mild in manner, but bold in matter. And sometimes these things happen where people are doing things that seem mild, that seem pretty basic, but yet by doing them, they put into motion a series of events that cannot be reversed. A lot of communists hated Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. They hated him. The Nation of Islam couldn't stand him. A lot of black Marxist-Leninists, they hated him. They said, this guy wants to wants to make black people part of the American system instead of having them align with the colonized people around the world. He won't let communists come to his rallies. But the Communist Party's leadership, they had the understanding that Martin Luther King Jr. may be a reformist, but what he's doing here, this is the essence of something that's going to be bigger. And so it's with this kind of understanding, I want to point you all towards some events that are happening right now. And I'm gonna predict something. It may not happen the way I'm predicting. I could be dead wrong about this. I've been dead wrong before. I am not a prophet. I do not have divine abilities. All I can point to is what's before my eyes, and I can use my scientific Marxist understanding. I can use my historical experience. I saw how Occupy developed. I saw how Black Lives Matter developed. I see how these things happen. I see how they put up trial balloons for a little bit, and they put up their trial balloons, and they see where they go. I'm going to point out a few things to you. First thing, East Palestine. We've seen what happened there with the horrendous train wreck and the chemicals that are in the air and the way the government hasn't responded. It's awful. It's awful what happened in East Palestine. Here's this little tiny town in Ohio near the Pennsylvania border, and a whole lot of rural folks, working class folks, deeply conservative folks, Trump voters, a whole lot of them just got poisoned, and they're worried about their health, and it's a disaster. And the government has betrayed these folks. It's awful. And it's an ongoing scandal. Have you been paying attention to the train wreck in East Palestine and how Donald Trump went there? Have you been paying attention to that? This is important stuff. This is very, very important. But now I'm going to point you towards something else that I was not aware of. Forgive me, I was not aware of this, right? So I'm not claiming, I'm not as tuned into these things as I should be. But this happened. This is Ben Shapiro, of all people. Not someone I'm a big fan of at all. This is Ben. I'm going to pull up Ben Shapiro commenting on something. This is 2 days ago. This was a video on Ben Shapiro's channel. And I'm waiting for it to download here, but I'm not tuned into everything. I blinked and missed this one because this isn't the kind of thing I pay attention to. But as soon as I heard about this, alarm bells went off in my head. So, I heard about this. And alarm bells went off in my head immediately as soon as I heard about this. I'm just parsing the video here for you. It'll be real quick here. But some stuff is happening beneath the surface. Some stuff is happening beneath the surface. I loathe Ben Shapiro. Don't misunderstand me. I loathe Ben Shapiro, but that's why I missed the boat on this. That's why I don't pay attention to what Ben Shapiro is saying. I could care less what he thinks, but in this instance, he's kind of pointing towards something that matters. Tucker Carlson also talked about it. Here, I'll pull up. We'll watch Tucker Carlson on it as well, because this is important. This is really, really important. Something's happening. Okay, something's happening. Something's happening here. And, if we don't pay attention to stuff like this, if we don't get out of our little bubble, this is not something that Marxists are talking about. This is not something they were talking about at the Rage Against the War Machine rally. This is not something they're talking about at Left Forum. This is not something that Max Blumenthal is talking about on his podcast. This is not something that they're talking about on Vosh streams. This is not something that they're talking about on BreadTube videos. This isn't something they're showing on Democracy Now, but it's happening. It's happening. And in light of what just happened in East Palestine, and in light of some other events, something's happening here, and we got to pay attention to it. We got to be ready to respond to this. We got to be ready to respond to it, or we're going to get left behind. You got to pay attention to what's going on here in the power structure. I'm sorry. I know you all want to see it, and so do I. I'm waiting for the gosh darn video to finish downloading here, but something's happening here, right? I told you about a horrendous train wreck that just happened in East Palestine. Horrendous train wreck, horrendous train wreck that just happened. And here, while we're waiting for this video to download, I'll tell you about something else that's happening at the same time. A Hollywood movie was just released, right? Lionsgate, major film studio, Lionsgate just released a movie 4 days ago. They released a movie called Jesus Revolution. Did people see this? It's probably not a very good movie, right? Haven't seen it. I'll probably go see it just so I can tell you about it. But Jesus Revolution was released. This film from a major. This wasn't like a little tiny Christian, production. This was Lionsgate grossed $15 million since it's just been out in 4 days. Jesus Revolution is a 2023 American Christian drama film directed by John Irwin, based on a book of the same name. The film follows the life of a youth minister and a pastor and the Jesus movement in California during the late 60s. Well, weird that they released this movie, but it's kind of a big deal, right? It's about hippie Jesus people. It's called Jesus Revolution. They're releasing it right now. This movie just came out. Odd timing in light of what I'm about to show you. Some stuff is going on here, folks. Got to pay attention to things that are going on. We can't just live in our bubble, but we talked about what just happened in East Palestine. Then a movie just came out. A Hollywood movie just came out. A Hollywood movie was just released. And my God, if this clip doesn't parse soon, I'm going to get frustrated. But here we go. Hollywood movie was released. Hollywood movie just came out. And there's been some events that just took place in Kentucky. And that's, that's what I'm talking about. Some stuff's been going on in Kentucky. All right, we know what happened in East Palestine, Ohio. Some stuff's been happening in Kentucky. And I'm going to show you what Tucker Carlson and Ben Shapiro had to say about it. This is worth paying attention to. I'm telling you, some stuff is happening. Some stuff is boiling beneath the surface. And I don't know if this is going to blow up into something. I really don't, but there's an odd alignment of events. And I've been here before, and I've seen this kind of thing before. Here we go. Here's the clip. All right. I'm putting it here. This is Ben Shapiro talking about giving his full endorsement. Again, that would be a reason not to support something, but in this case, I'm just going to show you what Ben Shapiro is saying here. Okay. This is Ben Shapiro.
I like, and then some things that I hate. So things that I like today. There's been this amazing event that apparently has happened before at Asbury University. They had a 24/7 revival meeting. It's called the Asbury Revival. And it's drawn tens of thousands of people, like 50,000 people, to this tiny Kentucky town over the course of 13 days just to pray. It's not political. It's not like a big Trump event. It's not like a big right-wing event. It's just a bunch of people who came to a church. And then over the course of 2 weeks, essentially, they just prayed and prayed and prayed and prayed. The fact that this is not drawn kind of intense media coverage is kind of shocking in the sense that it is a media story when 50,000 people descend on a very small town just to pray and find communion with each other and God. Like that's an amazing thing. I guess it's not that amazing the media won't cover it, because if they had been doing 50,000 people arriving for a 13-day orgy, then the media would be all over it, right? Then the media would be like, this is what American society must be. When people show up to have some good, clean, wholesome prayer with one another and in conjunction with religion, that's a bad thing, and we can't really pay that much attention to it. But it is an amazing, amazing thing. And the footage from the Asbury Revival is incredible. According to Fox News, the marathon worship service at Asbury University that has drawn tens of thousands of participants from across the country is now being forced to downsize because school officials are saying that it's causing logistical issues for the surrounding area. It's now going to need to move off of campus. The movement began after students actually refused to leave after a chapel service last Wednesday. The services have since grown to pack the school's chapel with worshipers from all over the country. Now, apparently there is a history to this. There's a professor at Asbury who talks about this. Is a piece over Christianity Today talking about the situation over there. Apparently, students are required to attend a certain number of prayer services. It's a religious school. And this has happened before where people have shown up and then refused to leave because they were feeling the Spirit so much. And here's how the professor describes it. Some were reading and reciting scripture. Others were standing with arms raised. Several were clustered in small groups praying together. A few were kneeling at the altar rail in front of the auditorium. Some were lying prostrate. Others were talking to one another, their faces bright with joy. They were still worshiping when I left late in the afternoon. And when I came back in the evening, they were still worshiping when I arrived early Thursday morning. And by mid-morning, hundreds were filling the auditorium again. I've seen multiple students running toward the chapel each day. By Thursday evening, there was standing room only. Students had begun to arrive from other universities: University of Kentucky, University of the Cumberlands, Purdue, Indiana Wesleyan, Ohio Christian University, Transylvania University, Midway, Lee University, Georgetown College, Mount Vernon Nazarene University, and many others. He said, some are calling this a revival. I know in recent years that term has become associated with political activism, but let me be clear, no one at Asbury actually has that agenda. Apparently,
they keep insisting it's not political. And I have different thoughts, but
Asbury does have a history with revivals, including one that took place in 1905 and one in 2006, when a student chapel led to 4 days of continuous worship, prayer, and praise. The fact is that religion requires community. One of the things that we have done by reducing religion to spirituality is we have suggested that what religion really is about is your internal feeling of solidity with God. That is not really what religion is about. Religion does include that component, but that is not the entirety of religion. Religion requires you to commune with others. It is why it happens in churches. It is why in the Talmud it says that God rests where there are 10 people, where there are 10 men praying together. That's you have to have 10 men to form a minyan, right, in order to do certain aspects of Jewish prayer for each prayer service. We pray 3 times a day. The idea that a community is built around a common cause is what has allowed the growth of civilization. So just evolutionarily speaking, human beings have a very hard time congregating.
He's not wrong about what he's saying here at all. And a lot of people are desperately longing for community right now. I'm telling you, something's happening.
Above a certain number. If you can't have that many people on the same page without a higher cause. Otherwise, they tend to break down into tribes. They tend to break down into families. What religion did, historically speaking, is it allowed people to abstract up the chain, because now you can get tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people on the same page because they were worshiping the same God and aiming for the same thing. And there is something euphoric about worshiping with tens of thousands of other people.
He's not wrong about that either. I'm telling you, something's happening.
I've done it myself. When I go to the Kotel on a Friday night, the Western Wall on a Friday night in Israel, in Jerusalem, there is that feeling of we are all here together and we're all doing the same thing and we are all oriented toward a higher purpose. That is a good thing. And that hole in the spirit is filled in our society by either nothing, which is leading to rising tides of chaos, despair, loneliness.
He's not wrong about this either. He's wrong about almost everything he says, but everything he's saying here is pointing to truth, which probably indicates why this is being mobilized.
Or it's filled with really bad causes. People tend to fill it with politics. Politics tends to fill that void for a lot of people. And suddenly you're looking at political utopianism, which is why you see all of these sort of very radical political agendas that are driven forward by a feeling of community. That's why a Bernie Sanders rally, for example, turns into almost a religious revival worship service very often. People need that in their lives. People want to feel that feeling of belonging, a feeling of higher purpose, and a feeling they're part of something bigger than themselves. When that is oriented towards something proper, like a relationship with God, a God who calls on you to be moral and good toward your fellow man, that is
blah, blah, blah. So Ben thinks this is a great substitute for being a left-wing activist, but something's happening. And I'm going to show you Tucker Carlson's footage on it also. This is what Tucker Carlson reported here.
And figure that out. And the good news is a lot of people are starting to think more about what happens when you die. They're becoming much more interested in the spiritual life, which has been basically extinguished in the public square for a long time. So here's a sign that people are becoming more interested. Asbury University, which is a private Christian college in Wilmore, Kentucky, outside Lexington, began hosting a prayer service a week ago, but it never ended. It's still going on. People just keep showing up from around the world. The university has even set up overflow chapels to accommodate demand. Here's what it looks like. So we keep hearing about this. There haven't been many news stories on it, but it's all over social media, on TikTok, actually, of all places, and reports that people are flying in from Singapore and New Zealand to join whatever this is. And so we thought it'd be worth finding out, what is it? Allison Perfader is the student body president at Asbury University, and she joins us tonight. Allison, you're so nice to come on. Thank you. What is this, do you think?
Right, what is this? That's what we can... I mean, that's the question, right? And a theme or a Bible verse that we've all been sharing with each other is Habakkuk 1. And the Lord says, look at the nations and watch, for I'm doing something in your day that you wouldn't believe if you were told. And it's happening, and we can hardly believe it.
Well, it seems remarkable. I mean, so many stories, you see them and you think, that's very different. I'm not quite sure what it means, but it's worth learning more. So my understanding is this began in a completely conventional service, and a boy got up and started talking about his own flaws, and then something changed in the atmosphere and it never ended. Is that fair?
That's completely what happened. So here at Asbury University, 3 mornings a week, we have chapel at 10 a.m. sharp. The whole student body gets together and we sing praise to the Lord, and we hear a message from a speaker, and for seemingly no reason at first, on Wednesday, February 8th, it didn't end. And that's kind of the logistical side of what's been going on. And then, on the deeper side of things, what's been happening here since Wednesday is there's a young army of believers who are rising to claim Christianity, the faith, as their own, as a young generation and as a free generation. And that's why people can't get enough.
That's amazing. So you felt like something like this was going to happen, because everything finds equilibrium, I think. Who are the people who are coming? Where are they coming from?
We don't know most of them. We've obviously been getting calls, hundreds of calls to the university switchboard number, but we have friends here from Brazil, from Indonesia, almost every state, and they just keep coming, and it's no wonder, and it's like you said, I mean, especially in the midst of tragedies like what we've seen in Michigan State University, and even farther back to 2020, especially our generation was impacted so much, and so you have to wonder, what's going to break. And in this case, the Holy Spirit has interceded for us here at Asbury and across the nation.
I assume you don't know how long this will continue?
I could not tell you, and I wouldn't want to guess.
No, you wouldn't. Allison, thank you.
All right. Now, I do not buy that this is not political, right? I'm sure they're not chanting political slogans there. I'm sure political candidates are not going there, but I don't buy that this is not political. I mean, this is very political. Look where it's happening, in Kentucky, in a red state that is economically destitute, the home state of Rand Paul, the home state of Jeff Young, in the parts of the country where people are economically struggling, where the infrastructure is falling apart. Look what just happened in East Palestine. I don't think this is not political. This is very political, what's happening. Furthermore, Hollywood just released a movie to promote stuff like this. They just released a movie called Jesus Revolution. Just hit the theaters 4 days ago. That's not an accident. It takes a long time to make a movie. It's not something one can just do at the snap of their finger. And did you watch the recent Saturday Night Live? Saturday Night Live was going out of its way to offend wokeness. They didn't really say anything deeply radical, but they had Woody Harrelson make some kind of crack about vaccine mandates and big pharma. And look, I'm telling you, the Biden presidency is tanking. And my feeling is that they are getting ready. They are getting ready to bring into office a Republican, probably DeSantis, right? You know. And I am convinced that they have tapped into all of the anger in the Midwest, all of the anger in the Rust Belt states, all the anger and resentment and hopelessness among young people, young Americans, 20-year-olds and 19-year-olds and 22-year-olds. They have tapped into all of that anger, and they realize something's happening. And I think this is going to be the next big thing. And I believe it's coming from the ruling class, and I believe it's political. And that it's just like the Democrats made Occupy Wall Street happen for their own reasons, to give voice to economic populist sentiments, to get the energy going. I am convinced that this is in response to the economic destitution and the anger and the resentment against wokeness and the depression and the hopelessness all across the red states. It looks to me like the Ron DeSantis wing of the deep state and the neocons have called up their evangelical allies, and they said, we're going to have a revival. We're going to have a revival. That's what I think is happening, right? I do think this is coming from the top. I do think they've noticed how many young people are getting religious. During the pandemic, many young people converted to either Islam or Russian Orthodox Christianity. There was a widespread interest in religion during the pandemic. There's widespread resentment and hopelessness. And I am convinced the fact that they released this Hollywood movie, Jesus Revolution, the fact that that this is happening and they got 50,000 people piling into a small town in Kentucky to do this, the fact that the anger in the red states is growing, and the anger that led to January 6th is growing, that Donald Trump went to East Palestine and gave a presser. I am convinced this is the next big thing, right? And I think you're right, Funky. I think you're right. I think that somebody at the top said, all right, let's have a big religious outpouring in the Midwest. I think that they said, let's do it. And right now it's still February and it's still freezing cold out there. But pretty soon it's going to be March. In a couple days here, it's going to be March, and then it'll be April, and then it'll be May. And this, I think, is going to be the next big thing. There's going to be some kind of Christian Occupy Wall Street. They're going to have huge open air 24/7 religious revival meetings. That's what I think is on the horizon, folks. I'll just be honest with you. The ruling class is doing this for their own reasons, but they're also doing it because the sentiments from below, the trembling rage of a generation, is there, and they have to give voice to it. And I am convinced that this is coming up. They're going to, throughout the red states, throughout the Rust Belt, throughout the Midwestern states, throughout the South, there is going to be huge open air Christian revival concerts. And it's going to be on the surface, not political. They're going to say it's not political. Oh, no, this is not political. This is just about getting back to God. This is just about religion. But it'll be political because the Zionists will be running the show. The evangelicals who are very close with Israel will be running the show because the Republican Party and their, Mike Pence crowd, they're going to be running the show. But that's not the point. That's not the point, because they would only be doing it to try and give voice and channel real sentiments. There is real anger. There is real hopelessness. There is real pain among millions of working class Americans. There's millions of communities that have been destroyed. And the desire for some kind of religious awakening is big among the population. It is big. It is massive. It is massive among the population right now. People in this country are desperate. They're desperate and they're hopeless and they're struggling and they want answers and they're isolated and they need somewhere to turn. They need somewhere. They need love in their hearts. They need comradeship. They need community. Did you hear what Ben Shapiro was on there just saying about how people need to come together and how it's about a community and how it's when people get together and do things, there's a desire deep in people's souls for this. And it's coming. It's coming. And unfortunately, we know how the ruling class is going to try to use this. They're going to try to use this to demonize China. They're going to try to use this to whip up jingoism and hostility. They're going to try to use this to support Israel and Zionism. That's how the ruling class is going to try to manipulate it. However, we can intervene as well. We need to intervene with an anti-war message. If this blows up, we need to be there. And we, as the Center for Political Innovation, need to insert ourselves into this movement. We need to insert ourselves into it and push it in an anti-imperialist direction. Because there's going to be thousands and thousands of people who are lost and looking for something, who are going to drift into these huge Christian revival meetings. As the weather gets better, it looks to me like the ruling class has decided this is what they're going to do, right? And it's because it's the red states. It's the red states that have been affected by this, right? It's the red states that have been hit the baddest. And I think this is coming. And again, maybe it won't work out. Maybe the sentiment among the masses is not there, but I think it is. Maybe sections of the ruling class are too afraid and they won't get it going, but I think they aren't. I think my prediction is that sections of the ruling class that want DeSantis and want Biden out and want a neocon president are going to foment in the coming months a widespread Christian revival movement all throughout the South. There's going to be open air prayer meetings. There's going to be open air church services that go on 24/7. There's going to be little Christian Woodstocks all over the country in the coming months. That is my prediction. And I honestly don't think that's a bad thing. I support it, but I recognize that evil forces are going to try to use it. I support for the sake of others, that right and wrong. I think that's a good thing that this is happening. However, I also know that there are evil forces that would like to manipulate these events. And that if we can't, as revolutionaries and anti-imperialists, find a way to intervene and push revolutionary politics and push this in a good direction, it will lead to something bad. It will lead to something very, very bad. And just like we were part of movements It is our duty to intervene. It is our duty to intervene in these coming events. We really have no choice but to intervene. We have no choice but to intervene at these upcoming events. Microphone problems here. Trying to fix the mic here. Don't know why it's acting this way. It's annoying. It's certainly annoying to have your microphone acting weird, but it seems to be on now. So there we go. But we have to intervene. We have to find a way to intervene. Because if we don't intervene, then we're leaving this to the warmongers. You know, we need to be there with a big banner that said, Jesus said, feed the poor, don't start wars. You know what I mean? We need to be there with our, with our Jesus is a socialist book. We need to be there. We need to get thousands and thousands of copies of this book out. We need to get thousands and thousands of copies of this book out at those rallies. It's not going to be easy, but I'm looking at this. I'm looking at what's going on right now. And I think we're going to have to intervene. I don't see how we cannot intervene. The ruling class is planning to try and channel the rage, is trying to channel the anger of millions of working class young people and the desire to be part of something. They're going to try and channel this into a mass religious revival movement. I think that's pretty clear. That's very, very clear. The fact that there's been a Hollywood movie released to promote it, the fact that this Asbury thing is already getting play from Tucker Carlson and Ben Shapiro, the fact that the conditions in the Rust Belt states are getting worse and worse and worse, I think it's going to happen. I think it's going to happen. And yeah, I don't think this is spontaneous. I think that this is coming from above. And yeah, I think that they may say it's not political, but I think forces that want to make it political and want to make it serve imperialism are going to be very active and present. We know how much money those big evangelical churches have, those big Christian Zionist organizations that are tied in with Israel and send their people to Israel every year. We know how much money they have, right? We know what's going on here, but that doesn't mean we can just sit on the sidelines. And it also doesn't mean we should condemn it. And I expect the synthetic left will just immediately condemn it. There'll be one person there and they'll take a picture and they'll say, it's a Nazi event. It's transphobic. And fuck them. Fuck them. Let them do their thing. Let them be isolated. Let them be Biden's foot soldiers. Fuck them. Right? We have to intervene. We have to intervene. If this turns into a big thing, which it very well might, and I mean, based on what I'm seeing here, this is looking like this is going to have a lot of energy. We have to intervene. We have to intervene. I don't see any way around it. We have to intervene. We have to intervene in what looks like a kind of mass revival movement that's on the headline, on the horizon right now. The ruling class is doing it for their own reasons. For their own reasons, the ruling class is doing it, but we have to intervene. I mean, there's just no way to not intervene in this. We have a responsibility to intervene. We have to intervene. We have to, yeah, I mean, you make a good point because most of the anti-imperialist sentiment has been coming from the right and they want to stop it. Bingo. Bingo. I mean, this is, they're giving just like they gave the left to Occupy Wall Street, they're going to give this to the right because most of the right-wing folks in the Midwest and South are evangelical, and most, I'm not just going to go there. We need lots of people to go there. We need thousands of people to go there, but we need the Center for Political Innovation to intervene. We have to intervene. And they won't want us there. I'll tell you that much. And of course, they're going to say this is not political. They're already saying that. Every second they turn around, this is not political. Oh, no, this is not political. It's like the lady doth protest too much. It's totally political. It's totally political. It's totally political. totally political what's happening out there at Asbury. It's totally political. And we have to intervene. We have to intervene. That this is there's huge sentiments of opposition to the status quo coming from the Rust Belt, coming from Appalachia. Oh, come on. And wrote it down, but and we have to intervene in this, right? And we can't condemn it because we shouldn't condemn it. The fact that thousands of young people want to live for a higher purpose, the fact that thousands of young people want to have God in their life and want to be part of a group and want to be part of a movement, that's a good thing, right? It's a good thing on the surface, but we know there are dark, sinister forces that want to manipulate it, and we have to intervene. We have to intervene. I mean, there's no way we cannot intervene. And if this blows up, which it very, very well might, and I think there's a very good chance this blows up, we have to intervene. And we have to be there saying, real Christians want peace. Real Christians want peace on the Korean Peninsula. Real Christians want Russia and America to get along. Russia is a Christian country. Why are we arming pagan Nazis, in Ukraine, these pagan Azov battalion folks that are persecuting the Russian Orthodox Church? We have to intervene. We have to intervene, and we have to keep our eye on this. This blew up over social media. I mean, this has the potential to really turn into something, right? Maybe it won't, It's possible that I could be wrong and that they throw up the trial balloon and this doesn't go anyplace. That's very possible. But if this blows up into something, we have to intervene. We have to intervene because this is how things get started. I'm going to read you another quote from the Communist Manifesto. The Communist Manifesto is a really great document. People think it's very basic, but there's a lot in it. There's a lot crammed into the Communist Manifesto that is very, very it's very, 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 it's quite a powerful document. Let me just put it that way. And there are things in the Communist Manifesto that people completely miss and they gloss over. So let me just pull up. This is a quote from the Communist Manifesto about how important divisions in the ruling class are. I'm going to pull this up because, again, there's a lot of things that we miss, right? There's a lot of things that we miss. This is what the Communist Manifesto says. The bourgeoisie finds itself involved in a constant battle, at first with the aristocracy, and later on with those portions of the bourgeoisie itself whose interests have become antagonistic to the progress of industry. At all the time, the bourgeoisie of foreign countries. In all these battles, it sees itself compelled to appeal to the proletariat to ask for help, and thus to drag it into the political arena. The bourgeoisie itself, therefore, supplies the proletariat with its own elements of political and general education. In other words, it furnishes the proletariat with weapons for fighting the bourgeoisie. And finally, in times when the class struggle nears the decisive hour, the progress of disillusion goes on within the ruling class. In fact, within the whole range of the old society, and it assumes such a violent, glaring character that a small section of the ruling class cuts itself adrift and joins the revolutionary class, the class that holds the future in its hands. Just as, therefore, in an earlier period, a section of the nobility went over to the bourgeoisie. So now a particular portion of the bourgeoisie goes over to the proletariat, and in particular, a portion of the bourgeois ideologists who have raised themselves to the level of comprehending theoretically in the historical movement as all. This is how revolutionary movements happen, right? This is how revolutionary movements happen. The ruling class teaches the proletariat. It gets the proletariat politically active. It gets the proletariat active. It's the proletariat active, right? This is, again, I'll read you what the Communist Manifesto says. This is really important. In all these battles, it sees itself compelled to appeal to the proletariat to ask for help, right? To bring the working class into politics, and thus to drag it into the political arena. And the bourgeoisie itself, therefore, supplies the proletariat with its own elements of political and general education. In other words, it furnishes the proletariat with weapons for fighting the bourgeoisie, meaning that the ruling class, as they fight with each other, they start recruiting working people to be their foot soldiers. And that's what we're seeing now. Black Lives Matter, Occupy Wall Street, the Tea Party, the Donald Trump January 6th thing. The capitalists are fighting among each other, and they are compelled to recruit working people to fight their battles. Right? This is the natural process of capitalism and decay. The capitalists fight with each other, and they start recruiting workers to be their allies against another faction. And that brings working people into politics. And working people learn how to organize, and they learn how to protest, and they learn how to come together and make demands. They learn how to assert their needs and fight for their rights. And then pretty soon, instead of the working class being the foot soldiers of the bourgeoisie, the working class movement is so big that the bourgeoisie end up coming over to the side of the proletariat, right? This is the revolutionary process. And we're seeing it play out here in the United States. The working class is angry and suffering. U.S. society is in crisis. The ruling class are fighting among each other. And working people are increasingly being brought into politics. They are being brought into politics because the capitalists are fighting with each other. And they are giving us the tools with which we can build our own movement. But if we don't intervene, if we just stand on the sidelines, we're never going to get anything right? And that this is what you have to understand, right? Again, like I said, the movement to bring down the French king began with a march to go praise the king and beg the king to give them more food. The Russian Revolution, the 1905 revolution, how did it begin? With a priest who was a police informant, Father Gapon. He had a peaceful march to beg the czar for more bread, and then it was violently repressed by the government, and one thing led to another, and then there was a mass uprising. That often mobilizations of a non-revolutionary character that are meant by the ruling class to just kind of give voice and kind of let the workers blow off their steam turn into something very, very different very quickly. That is something that you really have to understand if you understand the history of revolutionary organizing. So as it starts getting warmer, and if this blows up, which I think it's a very, very good chance it'll blow up, we have to be prepared as the Center for Political Innovation and as the city building tendency and as Marxists and as revolutionary Christians, we have to be prepared to go into it, right? With this kind of literature. We have to be prepared to go into these movements and not let them just become pro-war, pro-establishment, pro-Israel mobilizations. We have to go in and try our hardest to stoke up and amplify any anti-war, anti-imperialist, anti-capitalist sentiments that are already there, because they are there beneath the surface. Believe me, working people are sick and tired of the way the country is falling into the toilet, the way their living conditions are getting worse. Working people are angry and upset, and they're ready to fight. And that's why the ruling class is fomenting these kinds of movements. And so if this blows up into something, I'm looking at Asbury and I've been watching videos of it all day, and I've been saying, here we go. We have to support it. We can't be hostile to it because it's a good thing on the surface. Unfortunately, bad people will try to use it for bad things, but it's a good thing that people want to be awakened. They want to have community. They want to find a higher purpose. They don't want to be hopeless. That's a good thing. And we have to intervene and push it in an anti-imperialist direction. And we have to put forward the property question, right? Yeah, this could be an unmissable opportunity. Plus, we need a huge dose of social conservatism to push back against the wokest cancer. Yeah, I mean, everyone's tired of wokeism. I mean, it's pretty clear that everyone's tired of wokeism. The woke stuff, people are sick and tired of it. People are sick and tired of check your privilege. People are sick and tired of state your pronouns. People are tired of it. People are sick and tired of it, right? And because they're sick and tired of it, there's going to be some energy coming from other sections of society. We have to be able to intervene. If we don't find a way to intervene, and it won't be easy. I don't even know how this is going to work. I mean, it might be hard to not get kicked out on the first day at these events, right? I mean, these events may be much more controlled than protests are because they may not be in public places. But we have to find a way to intervene. We must find a way to intervene. It would be a huge missed opportunity, but it would also be dangerous because if they are able to turn these big outpourings of Christians into pro-war rallies, we could have World War III with China. Think about it, right? If they were able to transform these huge mobilizations of people into support for war, support for U.S. imperialism, support for anti-communism, we could have World War III. If we don't intervene effectively and allow the anti-imperialist and anti-war sentiments that are already widespread among the Rust Belt states and the anti-establishment sentiments, if we don't intervene at these gatherings, only evil forces will. Only the forces of evil will intervene. It would be a huge mistake. And I don't give a crap what Jason Unruhe says. And I don't give a crap what the PSL says, right? PSL, they're going to fart out a statement about how this is an evangelical fascist movement. One of the speakers said something homophobic once. It's homophobic. We're against it. Oh, they don't like it. That's what they're going to do. Jason Unruhe is going to say, oh, there's a picture of one guy at this, so that means the whole thing's a Nazi. Fuck them. Fuck them. Who cares? They're not serious political forces, right? They're just foot soldiers of the Democratic Party. But those of us who are serious, we're going to have to find a way to intervene. If this blows up, which it very well might. It is not a coincidence that the Hollywood movie happened. It is not a coincidence that this is happening in the aftermath of East Palestine. It is not a coincidence that this blew up all over social media. It's not a coincidence that Ben Shapiro is promoting it. It's not a coincidence that Tucker Carlson is promoting it. I'm telling you, there's blowback against wokeism coming right now. People are sick and tired of the wokes, myself included. People are looking for a purpose. People are looking for something to believe in. People want to have God in their life. People want to have, good values and a purpose. And people want to be part of something bigger than themselves. This is something that's coming. We have to find a way to intervene. We must intervene, right? We must intervene. There's just no two ways about it. We must intervene in these events. So on that note, people, tonight I will go to the roll call, names and locations. I will call you out as I see you. Names and locations. And I'll start answering super chat questions. Names and locations. Who's with us tonight? Names and locations. Who is with us? Names and locations. Who's with us tonight? Names and locations. We got Valen in Richmond, Virginia. Welcome, Valen. We got Cleveland Pirate Alex. We got Jared from Virginia. Rice from Adelaide, Australia. Welcome. Define Good Values. We got Ryan in Oakland. Check out Ryan. I'm going to post his interview as a standalone video pretty soon. Define Good Values, right? I got Timoshenko in St. Louis. Got Rennie from Hamilton, Ontario. Randall in Lexington, Kentucky. We got Edward Allen in Kentucky. Indiana, Gary Curtis. Pritish from India. Patch from Arizona. Kieran from San Diego. Bendigo, Australia. David Fox. Alex from Brazil. Balthazar in Oakland. Salty Granny in Tennessee. Catherine from Springfield, Missouri. Temple City, California. Portland, Oregon. Raleigh, North Carolina. Joe in Los Angeles. Maple in Chapel Hill. Has Kentucky ever never seen Close Encounters? It starts. I don't know if that's a joke or serious. I'm just going to leave that be. Bob Troy in New York. Douglas from Newfoundland, Michigan. Mark in Mission, Texas. Ryan from Atlanta. Killian from Milwaukee. Oklahoma. Tornado Alley. I hope you're safe, Lori. Shout out to you and everyone who's suffering from a tornado. Mexico City. Jeju, Korea. Jenny Lynn says LOL. Killian from Milwaukee. Very, very good. Very, very good. Palestine Corridor, KCMO. Welcome. Charles Dominic Williams from Malta. Thanks for everything. You're very, very welcome. You are very, very welcome. Anyone else? Names and locations. St. David's, Bermuda. Shenyang cult from. All right. Very, very good. Briggy, shout out to you, Briggy. God bless from Chicago. Driver 8 from Ohio, right? Maddie from California that actually has got some snow, cold, and rain. Yeah, it's chilly here too. Not good weather. Not good weather. Mary from Pine Ridge, South Dakota. Welcome, Mary. Do you like Coke Zero? I prefer Diet Coke, honestly. Coke Zero, there's a little bit of a syrupy flavor to it. So, yeah, there you go. Alex in Beijing. Welcome, Alex. Welcome, Alex. All right, folks. Steve in Boston. Welcome, Steve. Welcome, Steve. Very, very good. All right, folks. So if anyone has any more super chats, I think before I play the super chats, if you got more super chats, I'll write them down. Before I play the super chats, I have been meaning to play this communist song on these lives for a long time. It's a long time favorite. We have someone play it at almost every one of our CPI events. We have someone perform this song. I'm going to play it. It's called They Shall Rule the Earth. It's from the PLP. It's classic. Yeah, it's a classic. And yeah, it's probably one of the best communist songs I know. Here we go. Here we go.
The men and women on the line, they're working overtime, sweating for a dime. Their labor stolen from them, and they're not paid what it's worth. Someday they shall rule the earth.
Here's to the tillers of all land, bending down in toil, harvesting the soil, working through the cold and heat, growing rice and wheat. Someday they shall rule the earth. The working women of all shores, working night and day, often for no pay. In your liberation, men too will find salvation. Someday they shall rule the earth.
As for the killers of our dreams, the fat cats with their schemes, their hungry war machines, the bankers and the businessmen, those noble men from birth, someday we'll drive them from the earth.
This song is to the workers of the world. Our challenge has been hurled, our banners come unfurled.
Sisters, brothers, shed your chains, let the fight begin.
We've got a socialist world. We've got a socialist world.
We've got the whole wide world to win.
All righty. Thanks, everybody. I hope people took my words seriously, and we'll see what pans out in the next few months. But we ought to be prepared to intervene. If this blows up into something. All right. So the first super chat question I've got is someone says, is the Dugan narrative a psyop? Well, I don't know. I mean, what does that mean? right? I mean, I've got a few Dugan books here. I've got The Fourth Political Theory. I learned a lot from this book. I mean, it's full of very interesting insights. I've got what is it? The Last War of the World Island, Geopolitics of Contemporary Russia. I've got what? Putin versus Putin. You know, I don't think I have any other Dugan books here. I might. I don't see them. But, you know, I mean, Dugan is an important thinker. I mean, he's an important I mean, he's frequently quoted in Chinese media. He's an advisor to Putin, and you know, he's a little bit over. I think that U.S. media likes to play up Dugan because they've made him into this like scary thing, right? You know, he's got a big beard, and there are some things he says that sound sympathetic to communism. And there are some things that he says that sound sympathetic to fascism. He's neither a fascist nor a communist. He has his own ideology called the Fourth Political Theory that rejects both Western capitalism, fascism, and communism. But if you're a right-winger, he scares the crap out of you because you think he's a communist. If you're a left-winger, he scares the crap out of you because you think he's a fascist. If you're an American who's lived a humble life, you know, he scares the crap out of you because he's got a big, long beard and he's Russian. And I don't know. It's like this thing that American media has created. And his ideas are very complex. Where can we reach out to you other than here? Email, calebmaupin@gmail.com. All one word, calebmaupin@gmail.com. It's just this thing, right? And I've had so many people who like, they see the picture of me sitting with him and they're like, oh my God, he's sitting next to a Nazi. He is not a Nazi. He is definitely not a Nazi. He is not in any conceivable way a Nazi. You can't be a patriotic Russian and support the Nazis, right? And if you read The Fourth Political Theory that he wrote, there's a whole lot in there criticizing and opposing conservatism and fascism and the right wing. Now, there's a lot criticizing Marxism and communism also. He's got his own worldview, but he's a very respected geopolitical analyst in Russia. And it's like, yeah, I mean, the fact that anytime you mention my name, immediately next to it, somebody posts, oh, that guy works for Dugan. Oh, he's sat next to Dugan. I met Dugan once in my life, you know, and I respect him, and I do. And he is not a fascist, and he is an important anti-imperialist thinker. And if you are serious, look, people in Venezuela study Dugan. Venezuelans told me I should study Dugan. I first got recommended Dugan in Iran. Iranian anti-imperialists recommended Dugan. Dugan is frequently quoted in Russia, in Chinese media. Chinese state media frequently quotes him. So this idea that Dugan, oh my God, Dugan's a Nazi. Anyone who talks to him is a Nazi. That's like the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Because right-wingers all think he's a communist. He's neither a communist nor a Nazi. He's Dugan. He's Dugan. And his views, he tries to give voice to what people around the world that oppose Western capitalism, imperialism, what they think. A lot of them are very socially conservative, but a lot of them are also very anti-capitalist, right? And that Dugan is kind of, you know, there's a reason that now in China, for example, Mao, there's a great revival of Mao in China. There's also a great revival of Confucius. Mao and Confucius were on opposite sides politically. Confucius was the symbol of tradition and filial piety and all that. Mao is the symbol of it is right to rebel and communism. But Mao and Confucius both kind of walk together now as part of China's unique non-Western identity. That's Dugan. That's Dugan. Right? The fact that, you know, Stalin is wildly popular in Russia these days, but so are some of the great czars, and so is the Russian Orthodox Church. That's Dugan. Right? You know, the fact, I mean, that, you know, I mean, that around the world there is opposition to Western capitalism and imperialism, but it's not the same old communism. It's not 20th century communism. It's quite socially conservative, but it's also quite anti-capitalist, and it's opposed to the free market and the rule of the dollar. You know, these sentiments, they are widespread, and Dugan is one of the voices, you know, one of the voices who gives expression to them. And if you just write Dugan off and say, oh, anyone who talks about Dugan's a Nazi, Nazi, you're a Nazi, that's what you are, you're a Nazi. Like, seriously, I am like, there are so many like dumb 13-year-olds on the internet who think that like that's their great achievement. I found out how you're a Nazi. I got a screenshot. I've got a screenshot. You're a Nazi. It's like the most like childish thing, you know, and it's like they've accomplished nothing in their life. They've never been a member of any political organization. They've never really done anything, but they're really good at saying, you're a Nazi. Nazi. I found out that John is a Nazi. You know, I mean, it's dumb. It's really, really, really dumb. It's really dumb. It's really, 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 really dumb. And, you know, and it's just like, it's like you're accomplishing nothing, right? You are absolutely accomplishing nothing by engaging in this kind of silliness. It's really, really silly. And it's just like, you know, let's have like some real, you know, if you don't like Dugan, I'll tell you what you ought to do. Go read The Fourth Political Theory and write an article against what it actually says. That'd be a great thing for you to do. If you don't agree, if you don't like this book, go read it and write an honest critique of the arguments he makes and why they're wrong. That would be a good thing to do. But you won't do that. No. You'll just call me a Nazi for talking about it. I mean, you know, and that's the thing. That's how the internet is, right? So it is what it is. It is what it is. But anyway, so then John McCarthy says that the guy selling the Progressive Labor Party newspaper was not there to support the rally or oppose it, just to get his party's program out. Well, why wouldn't you support it? You know, I mean, there's a bunch of people that are opposing U.S. wars around the world. You don't have to endorse everyone there, but the idea that there's thousands, it was about 13,000 people there in D.C. 2 weeks ago. You know, so there you go. And, you know, there you go. I mean, you know, 13,000 people are out there opposing wars. Why can't you support that? Just support it. You know, I mean, it's a good cause, even if the ideology behind it, even if the reasoning is wrong, it's still a good cause. So there you go. From lower levels of struggle to higher, economic, political, and ideological. And that's, you know, David Fox is talking about the fact that, you know, yeah, we as an organization, I mean, that often political struggles start out over very mild things, very mild demands, but they escalate into something different. They escalate into a confrontation. Well, that's a good question. They escalate into a confrontation with the power structure. You know, and that means that it's important to pay attention to them, and that things can develop, and one thing can lead to another thing, and quickly you can go from Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. just saying, hey, can't we just, you know, sit at lunch counters and vote, to, you know, the Black Panthers and huge rebellions sweeping the country calling for the victory of the Vietnamese and the overthrow of American capitalism. That sometimes there's a lot of power within the minimum program, and that fighting for the minimum program unleashes the energy that brings you the maximum program. Right? In a revolutionary movement, you talk about the minimum program, which is just basic survival. Raise the minimum wage, no discrimination on the job, free political prisoners, just basic minimum program. Talk about the maximum program, which is the revolution, the workers control the means of production. And then you talk about the transitional program. And the transitional program is demands that change the power structure. Our 4-point program, if you look at it, it's a transitional program. Public control of natural resources, public control of banking, the state mobilizing the population to rebuild the country, an economic bill of rights. Those are transitional demands, right? They would, you know, in order to carry that out, you would have to push back so much capitalist power that, oh, thank you, Eduardo, that a revolution wouldn't be too far off, right? But in a revolutionary movement, you tend to have those three types of demands, you know, the minimum program, the transitional program, and the maximum program. And then you emphasize them at different times. Sometimes it's important to emphasize the minimum. Sometimes it's important to emphasize the maximum. Sometimes it's important to emphasize the transitional. There are different ways of intervening. But the point is to intervene. And when something's happening, you have to intervene. Someone said, you make a big point. Most of the anti-imperialist sentiment is coming from the right, and they want to stop it. Yes, that's why I think I'm onto something here. That's why I think there's going to be a mass Christian revival movement in Kentucky and Ohio and Pennsylvania and Michigan and Wisconsin and Milwaukee and all throughout the Midwest. All throughout the Midwest, there's going to be some kind of Christian revival, and we have to intervene with an anti-imperialist message, and we have to try and win people to socialism. And we can't let it simply be, used by the ruling class, who will try to manipulate it for war. They'll try to manipulate it for war, and we can't let them get away with it. We cannot let them get away with it. Why aren't communists going to East Palestine? Are there protests going on in East Palestine? I think right now it's just a place where there was a disaster. I mean, I'm sure if there was some kind of, uprising or protest, communists would go there. And Trump went there for a press conference. I don't think there's any protests right now. It's just kind of the site of a disaster at the moment. But I would be open to people going there. But there you go. There you go. The right wing's wet dream is Handmaid's Tale. Dude, didn't Netflix just make a documentary about Handmaid's Tale? I mean, didn't Netflix just make that documentary? I mean, if that's what you're saying there, you might as well work for Rachel Maddow. That message that you just gave there is coming from the highest levels of the bourgeoisie. And that doesn't mean we should support, the religious right. It doesn't mean we should support Mike Pence. It doesn't mean we should oppose gay marriage or abortion or anything like that. But if you're just going, oh my God, if Trump gets elected, it's going to be Handmaid's Tale. That sounds like Rachel Maddow. That's the most if you're talking that way and you call yourself a communist, you need to look yourself in the mirror and say, wait a second. All the people I'm opposing, the FBI, they're talking that way. MSNBC and CNN, they're talking that way. If that's what you're doing, I mean, Netflix is literally making not documentaries, like movies of Handmaid's Tale. So if that's the way you're talking, if that's the way you're talking, you're not doing anything revolutionary. Right. I mean, you're just not, right. I mean, and if you're pushing Christian phobia, basically Christian phobia, that's all you're doing. Right. I mean, it's one thing to say that you want rights for LGBT folks, which I want. It's one thing to say you think abortion should be legal, which I think. But when you right there, you're just like, oh my God, Handmaid's Tale. Handmaid's Tale's not coming. Okay. Come on now. Economics, man. Economics. Talk economics. Don't get into the social war. Seriously. And the next one is a similar one. They're going to go after LGBT people next. No, they're not. No, they're not. I mean, are there bigoted people that might? Sure. There's bullies who might go after them. There's people filled with hate who violently attack trans people on the street. That happens. But is the American government going to round up gay people and put them in concentration camps? No. Gay marriage is legal. It was legalized by the Supreme Court. I mean, the ruling class from the highest levels, Netflix, Facebook, Twitter, is pro-LGBT. Right now, the atmosphere, it's not that people aren't allowed to be pro-LGBT. It's that you if you're not pro-LGBT enough, right? I mean, I'm pro-trans, but I think trans people should have the right to be who they want to be, to identify how they want to identify, to live their lives. I'm very opposed to bullying. But you know what? I interviewed somebody who disagreed with trans ideology, and so immediately my life was destroyed by BreadTube. Now, does this sound like an atmosphere where gay people are being persecuted? No, this is an atmosphere where anyone who doesn't immediately toe the line completely gets persecuted. I was bullied in high school for taking pro-LGBT positions. I've always been in favor of LGBT rights. I've always been in favor of gay marriage. I always felt like homophobia and bullying and all of those things were wrong. It doesn't matter. I interviewed somebody who has made some legit points criticizing not even the movement, but just the ideology, just the perspective put forward by some trans activists. And I interviewed her, And people with huge accounts decided that they wanted to destroy my reputation and destroy my life. They went after my wife viciously. I'm banned from all kinds of leftist spaces. I have had my life destroyed when I've been pro-LGBT my whole life. I was in the LGBT club at my college. I've been pro-LGBT my whole life. But I just dared talk to somebody who's not even really anti-LGBT. She just has questions on the trans issue. And these people destroyed my life. They viciously went after me. So don't tell me. Don't give me that. Don't give me that at all, right? That I'm all for everyone's right to live however they want to live. And parents who abuse their children or estrange or kick them out of their houses, that's wrong. And there's all kinds of crimes that are committed against LGBT folks. Trans people get beaten up just for being trans. They just walk down the street and people beat them up. That's wrong. That needs to be done away with. I'm all for trans rights. I'm all for LGBT rights. But there is a group of people on the internet that if you don't agree, if I tweeted out right now, I support trans rights, I would immediately get like 12 people tweeting at me about what an evil person I was because I said it somehow the wrong way, right? There's a group of people on the internet whose job it is to viciously harass and target and bully anybody who dares question this stuff or say it the wrong way. So don't give me that. Just don't give me that. Okay. Just don't give me that. I don't buy it. Okay. Yeah. In the 90s when I was a kid and in the 2000s when Bush was president and got reelected with these anti-gay marriage initiatives, you might have something to say. You don't have anything to say now. Now, Americans are terrified that they're going to say the wrong thing on the internet about LGBT and they're going to lose their job. Did you know that? There's a good chance that if you got on the internet right now and said, you know what, I'm a Christian and I'm against gay marriage, that there'd be 5 people who would find out where you live, find out where you work, call up your boss and try to get you fired from your job. Is that right? I went to gay pro-LGBT protests for years, and it was really common at those LGBT protests. It was really common for a minister or a clergyman to get up and say, I personally don't believe that homosexuality is right, but it should be legal. It's between you and God. And you know what? The crowd of gay people would applaud. And they'd say, thank you for recognizing our civil rights and not imposing your religious beliefs on us. I remember I went to Gay Pride in Cleveland, and that was very common. There would be a speaker who was a religious person, and they would say, I personally don't believe that it's right, but you have the right to live your life. And the crowd would go wild and applaud for them because it was about civil rights. It wasn't about thought crimes. It wasn't about thought conformity. So don't give me that. Don't give me that. Please just don't. Don't go there. Don't go there. Right? Don't go there. You have no idea, right? And let me also say that, well, anyway, I could go on and on about this all night. But anyway, someone asked me to define good values. Not Ayn Rand, not Atlas Shrugged, not Friedrich Nietzsche, not individualism above all else, not disregard to the feelings of others, not being indifferent to other people's suffering, not refusing to share what you have, not seeing yourself as at odds with everyone else. Good values are community values. Good values are a desire to live for the sake of others. Good values are a desire to help those who are less fortunate than yourself. Good values are the ability to walk a mile in someone else's shoes, to say, there, but for the grace of God go I, to have compassion. Those are good values. Good values are a desire to overcome ethnic differences, national barriers, racial divides. Good values are a desire to make the world a better place, a desire to share what you have, a desire to make the world in which you live better than it was before you arrived. Those are good values. A desire to see prosperity and peace, a desire to mend broken relationships. These are all good values. A desire to see things from other people's perspectives, a desire to encourage people to be more compassionate and kind. These are all good values. These are all good values. Good question. Now, someone said, our leftists, they're so tired of leftists calling everyone Nazis because this gives power to actual Nazis. I couldn't agree more. Actual Nazis are quite easy to sense. They're quite easy. They're pretty obvious what they are. Sometimes they try to cover it up, which I've got some more recent experience with that, but they are what they are, and they give off a pretty strong scent. You know, actual Nazis are Nazis. Actual Nazis are Nazis. But there's plenty of people who are opposed to abortion and gay marriage, and they ain't Nazis. There's plenty of people that have racist sentiments and harbor racial bigotry that aren't Nazis. They just have a problem with their racial bigotry. There's plenty of people that that harbor some anti-Semitic feelings. They're not Nazis. There's plenty of people that there's a lot of people that are wrong. There's a lot of people that are bigoted, that are wrong, that have backward views that aren't Nazis. And when everyone's a Nazi, pretty soon no one's a Nazi. I mean, that's just a fact. When everyone's a Nazi, pretty soon no one's a Nazi. And this overuse of Nazi, everybody's a Nazi, except for like the actual Nazis in Ukraine, right? I mean, it's weird. They have this giant blind spot over Ukraine, right? Antifa. For some reason, Antifa, it's like everyone's a Nazi. Every conservative's a Nazi. Every anti-war leftist is a Nazi. But for some reason, this whole country in Ukraine where they're like burning the World War II memorials and stuff, not Nazis. Nope. I mean, it shows you who Antifa really works for. The fact that Antifa is not, they're supposed to be, we're going to fight fascism. I've never once seen Antifa counter-protest or attack a pro-Ukraine rally. Never once. They can be displaying the Azov battalion banners. They can be chanting Azov, Azov. And I've never seen Antifa ever counter-protest or attack a pro-Ukraine rally because Antifa works for the deep state. It does not work. It's not about fighting Nazis. It's about controlling dissent. That's all it's about. And unfortunately, right now, most of the dissent is coming from the right because we have a Democrat president. That's one reason. That's one reason. And also because the liberal order is doing this woke thing, for whatever reason, most of the dissent is coming from the right these days. So because of that, Antifa is going around and they're policing dissidents. And that's all they do. They are, the government, right? They can't have police just come beat up anybody who is against war with Russia. So they have Antifa do it. Oh, this is just a group of activists, right? Right. I mean, they can't destroy my reputation in my life simply because I work with Russian media and because I'm anti-imperialist. So they have bread tubers do it and spread lies about me and harass my wife and et cetera. Right. That's what they do. Right. And this is the deep state. And this is actually closer to what fascism actually is. This is what the brown shirts did. They couldn't break a strike, so they hired the brown shirts to do it. Well, right now, they're trying to maintain the veneer of democracy, so they can't outlaw dissent. So they have the Antifa crowd do it for them. But they're working with the intelligence agencies. They're getting their directions from the State Department. That's what's going on. So, yeah, there you go. You're right. And if everyone's a Nazi, pretty soon no one's a Nazi, right? And this last super chat I've got here, if anyone has any more super chats, by all means, send them. By all means, send some super chats because I'm happy to answer more super chats. If not, we can end the show. But the last super chat I've got here is, are you socially conservative? That's a good question. Am I socially conservative? What does that mean? Do I take socially conservative positions? Well, I'm not against gay marriage and I'm not against abortion. Those are the two positions that are like definitively socially conservative. Are you against gay marriage and are you against abortion? I am not against gay marriage. and I am not against abortion being legal. I may personally not feel that abortion is right, but I am in favor of it being legal. That alone is cancelable these days, but I said it. I am not in favor of abortion personally. I don't think it's right, but I think it should be legal. I don't think we should have a law against it. So, you know, there you go. I guess I'm not socially conservative, but I guess, you know, that puts me at odds though, because it's like, you're socially conservative now if you don't embrace the woke agenda. Right? Like, for example, there was a law in Florida that said that, you know, they shouldn't be discussing homosexuality with children under 8. I said, that's fine. It's fine. Under 8? You know, yeah, obviously, when you're like 12 or 13 and you're learning about government and society and you're learning about sex education, you have to talk about these things. But yeah, children under 8, let their parents talk to them about homosexuality. Leave that out of schools. What's wrong with that? You know, and it's like, oh my God, it's an awful law. I mean, just like, for children under 8? You know, and then a lot of the stuff that like the right wing was saying about, oh, they want to groom children. No, they don't want to groom children. I don't think that's what it is. I just think that it's just like, maybe for children under 8, that topic should be left out, you know? Right? Oh, my view of President Lula. So there we go. I guess we'll move on to my view of President Lula. My view of President Lula. Well, you know, I mean, he was better than Bolsonaro, you know, and I was hoping, because he was, you know, he always tried to play it both ways. He always tried to kind of be friendly to Venezuela and Cuba, but also be friendly to the United States. I remember when I was watching 2008, I had a dorm room and I was in my dorm, and a lot of the other kids had gone home for the winter break. And it was 2007, 2008. I was watching Barack Obama, all of his town halls when he was running for president. This one gets up there, Mr. President, I am from Venezuela. My country is a brutal dictatorship. What will you do to overthrow Hugo Chavez? And he says, well, Hugo Chavez is a brutal dictator. But, you know, the president of Brazil, Lula da Silva, now that guy is a socialist, but he's not a brutal dictator. And that's somebody we can work with. That Lula da Silva we can work with, but not Hugo Chavez. He's a brutal dictator. Yep. And it's like, you could always tell Lula da Silva was like middle of the road, right? You know, Barack Obama, we can work with him. You know, not such a bad guy. You know, he's not like that Hugo Chavez guy. That Lula da Silva, he's a good socialist. He's middle of the road. You know, he never really challenged property relations, right? It was always, he instituted some social programs. They gave like a free meal. You could just get on a line and get a free meal. They'd give you like a piece of fruit and a sandwich every day. They had a free meal program for poor people in Brazil. And, you know, and they, you know, the state-run oil company provided a lot of jobs and stuff, but they didn't really change property relations. It was still largely a capitalist economy, and they both sides did. Brazil is big enough that it has its own economy. That's what you have to remember. That, you know, Brazil is big enough. It's like India, where they can have bourgeois nationalism. They don't have to go fully socialist. Lula never fully went into the socialist camp. He was a social democrat, and sometimes he was anti-imperialist, but sometimes he wasn't. And after he left office, you had Dilma Rousseff, and she was very similar. And then they did what they do. They cleared him out with corruption charges. They railroaded Lula da Silva to jail, and it was a sham trial. I mean, it's been revealed that the judge and the prosecutor were colluding. You know, and that was how they got Bolsonaro into the presidency. And then it was revealed that the texts were leaked to reveal it was a sham trial. He was released from jail. And I was hoping, you know, because when he was in jail, he was like praising North Korea and he was saying some more radical stuff. I was hoping that when he got out of jail, he would be more, you know, more anti-imperialist, more communist. But, you know, it appeared pretty clearly when he took office that was not the case. The United States was giving him their blessing. And so, but who's to say, right? I mean, I know the situation in Brazil, you know, the Communist Party is very radical and very fired up, and, you know, and that's, you know, there's still a lot of anger, and Bolsonaro's people are still there, and it's complicated. So who's to say that he won't go in a better direction? But yeah, he certainly, I was hoping that when Lula got out of jail, he was going to be a full revolutionary, but that was not the case. That was not the case. But it shows you how much the Brazilian ruling class are fighting with each other. But another important thing to point out is that even when Bolsonaro was president, Brazil basically hinted they weren't going to go along with the sanctions on Russia over fertilizer. And even when Bolsonaro, this super pro-Israel, super right-wing guy, was in there, even Bolsonaro, I mean, the Brazilian ruling class has its own interests. There is bourgeois nationalism in Brazil. There's enough of a capitalist class in Brazil that even Lula da Silva, he basically, he was basically more or less, he wasn't fully with the United States against Russia for their own national interests. And so, that shows that even the right wing in Brazil is it's mixed, right? For the most part, Bolsonaro was pro-US, but there were a number of places where he for his own reasons. So, Brazil is an independent country. It's not a socialist country. And I was hoping that the election of Lula might lead in that direction. Who's to say it won't? Who's to say the contradictions in the country won't intensify and lead to that? But at the moment, Brazil remains a Brazil is a lot like, it's a lot like India. It's a lot like the Philippines. It's a lot like Turkey, where it has a government that is more independent, right? The existence of the anti-imperialist camp, Russia, China, Venezuela, Iran, Cuba, that lays the basis for countries to kind of be in the middle, right? It used to be you were either with the United States and the imperialists or you were against them. Now, you have room for, there's a layer of countries that exist that are bourgeois nationalists that are, they'll go either way. India will go either way. Turkey will go either way. The Philippines will go either way. They will, right? And Brazil is like that. Brazil at this point will go either way. And that's interesting. Now, who's to say things won't intensify and that might change? But at the moment, Brazil is a bourgeois nationalist country that will go either way. And it's only because of a strong Russia and China that countries even have enough space to do that. And that's important to remember, right? As the Cold War was ending, George Soros and the Color Revolution started sweeping away all these kind of military juntas that were doing stuff, right? Caleb is the sort of communist everyone moans about, like Robert Wyatt wanted to be. What does that mean? I don't know what that means. I don't know what that means. But the kind of communist that everyone moans about. All right. Well, if anyone's moaning about me, I forgive you for moaning about me. But there you go, folks. I hope we learned something here. I hope we're thinking about how to intervene. We got so much to do. So on that note, I'm going to put on the closing music, and then I'm out of here. Surge in the struggle against U.S. imperialism is now emerging throughout the world. Ever since World War II, U.S. imperialism and its followers have been continuously launching wars of aggression. But the people of various countries have been continuously waging revolutionary wars to defeat their aggression. And while the danger of a new world war still exists, and the people of all countries must get prepared, revolution is the main trend in the world today. Good night.